Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, David. Thank you so much. For those of you who are catching us for the first time, this is called CityClips, and we focus on business and tech in North Florida. And I am interviewing several of fellow Domi board members, and David Lawson is one of them. Thank you so much, David, for hopping on our humble show.
Glad to be here.
So I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we will dive in. Let's see if Perplexity did a good job. You can call me out if it did not. So David Lawson is a seasoned entrepreneur and CEO of Call Simulator, a platform that uses conversational AI to enhance call center training. He co-founded Call Simulator in 2021 and also leads NewSci, focusing on augmented intelligence solutions. Lawson is a social entrepreneur with a background in EdTech, social tech, committed to empowering human performance through innovative technologies. He's also an author and contributes to various advisory boards leveraging technology for social impact. How was that?
Not bad. Not bad.
That's 2 for 2.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah. So far, I mean, I keep hearing great things about Perplexity from entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs that I follow. So can't go wrong with that. I hear they're very, very accurate, and I haven't gone wrong so far. So, yeah.
It's all about curation of data.
Exactly. And so I'm glad that you hopped on to talk about your expertise in AI. You have extensive experience of starting and growing a business, a tech business, and especially in Tallahassee, that's not the easiest thing to do. So, yeah, we're going to talk about all kinds of topics. So, what I would love for you to kind of go back and talk about how you ended up in Tallahassee and why you started your business.
Yeah, so I came here for love. My wife grew up in Bainbridge and then was living here in Tallahassee, and she had gone to FSU grad school. So I'd been here before. Actually, FSU was a client of my old company. It was a data company. So I'd been here, but not really been here. It was just business. So I came, beautiful. It actually reminded me a lot of where I grew up in Virginia. So, love the trees, except during hurricane season. But one of the things that was interesting early on, this was about 2005, I was really surprised about what wasn't in Tallahassee. Both from everybody was a little too excited that a Target had opened. We had a couple of Starbucks. So I was kind of like, hey, this is a state capital, major state. Why? But also, there was no business incubator. And being an entrepreneur, and I've been one since I was 19, pretty much a company every decade since the 80s. So that was disappointing that I wasn't here. So I started to get to know the local people because actually there are a lot of entrepreneurs here. There are a lot of people that have started businesses and successful businesses. So I got to know people. Got to know a gentleman named Randy Blass because our sons played on the same soccer team. So his son and my stepson. And so we got to know each other and talk, and he worked at Jim Moran. So we're talking business, and I really probably would have gotten going with Domi in about 08, 09, but then the Great Recession came. And we were like, we're not going to do that. Even though ironically, bad times are good times for entrepreneurs, but it just wasn't the time to put that forward. So it was about 2013. Randy had invited me to be a judge for an entrepreneur boot camp for disabled veterans, which was a wonderful place because I am a social entrepreneur. I've kind of always been that before that was even a term. And so it was wonderful. Just, I mean, boy, you talk about just incredible human beings. And I went to one, I'd done a couple, but I went to one in 2013. Randy knew I'd been talking about the incubator, and he said, there are 3 other judges who kind of say the same thing you are, because it's not a novel idea, an incubator. Well, that's where I met Jay Kiker, Michael White, and John Vecchio. And Micah and all, when we just sat down, when you get 4 entrepreneurs together, things are going to happen. And this was probably June of 13. By October, by luck, I mean, luck is timing is that little thing entrepreneurs, either it works against you or for you, right? And it worked for us because the county happened to have that space and they needed to do something with it by October of that year in 13. So we were fortunate. We put forward a proposal. It got accepted, and then we were open in May of 14. Right now, as only an entrepreneur can do, I was already planning my next business at the same time, and that's where NewSci that you mentioned. They're literally only 2 weeks apart. The founding of the nonprofit behind Domi, which is Domi Education, and then my for-profit company, which is NewSci. So I suppose at the time I didn't fully think that both would be successful. But yeah, they were.
That's really cool. And it's funny because by happenstance, I knew Micah Wyden because we were team members prior to Domi. And
Okay.
and it's funny, I learned something new when you talked about how you met Micah and Jake. So Micah had reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm working on a project. Can you help me with some branding? We just need a basic logo." I'm like, "Okay, sure." So he said, "Yeah, it's called Domi Station." At the time. Yeah. Similarly, I started my business around the same time Domi did, and I was, I entered the foray of solo entrepreneurship and creative world. So yeah, thanks to Domi, I started.
Well, I mean that's really in the end, if it's done anything, it's been that. It sort of pulls people together. That's what was missing. I mean, in coffee shops, it was happening everywhere, but there wasn't really a good spot where we all might meet. And so, yeah, that's great to hear. I didn't realize, I knew you knew him, but I didn't know just how closely related. That's why you're an OG also for Domi.
Yeah, and actually there's quite a few OGs that successfully grew, that started and grew their business there. I know economic impact numbers, everyone's like, oh, they're just numbers, but it's still significant. It's at least, depending on who actually turns in their results and stats, and it's not even 100% return as far as people responding to the survey, and it's still over $100 million in economic impact.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem that Tallahassee was having was everybody would just bleed out. They would leave, right? So you'd have all this value, and then it would be gone. And so I think what Domi did for the first time was give people a thought. Well, I could do my business here, and just if you can capture that even for a moment, then some of those will stay. And that it was. We knew it was funny. Like, do you know it's going to work? Well, this has been done again and again in communities and communities. Yeah, I know it's going to work if the community will invest in it. If an entrepreneur, folks like myself, like you, will take that risk, because believe me, there were lots of people in the peanut gallery expecting us to fail, because I heard from all kinds of people that, well, this got tried and it failed, and this town will never work. The funny thing is, as an entrepreneur, I love to hear that, because it means, oh, good. So I'm going to get to build on top of their shoulders. And, it's just one of those things that, and I've been those shoulders where maybe my thing didn't quite work, but the next thing did, right? But I actually was happy that people had tried and failed. And I think that it just, things came together very nicely back then.
I love that. And even for those who tried, failed, or started something else, they eventually found success in something else. There's also value to talent development. We've had all kinds of folks, creative folks, that got a full-time job eventually in bigger companies like Adobe, Google, Apple, right? And some went to grad school, like Larry went to Harvard. So we had amazing talent go through Domi. And I know we keep talking about Domi because we're so passionate about it, but I wanted to ask you about Call Simulator. And just kind of like, okay, so there was NewSci, and then now with Call Simulator, what inspired you to get that started? And you've had success in raising funds, right? Aren't you currently
Yeah,
fundraising?
yeah. So it's in some ways a kind of a typical journey. So NewSci started because the commercialization of AI really began in that 2013, 14 period. We all remember IBM Watson, right? And that was the big thing. But the big deal was for the first time, it was going to be potentially available to an entrepreneur. So I saw it and said, I want to go after that because I've done that in my career kind of early into tech. So by 2014, we actually were one of the 24 companies allowed to use Watson that was not IBM. So we were at their corporate, this is NewSci, was at their corporate headquarters. I mean, it was amazing. I remember being there kind of going, wow. And it's because we did an AI for good. I had an idea that we could have studied nonprofit impact reports, and had we had that capability, could have predicted the opioid crisis while it was still in the Midwest. Because the problem was, by the time everybody knew it, it had hit the coast and it had gone too far. But in those impact reports, where things were, middle class people were getting addicted to opioids, and all they had was, a prescription. Right. So now we go, oh, yeah, but back then they didn't see it. So anyway, IBM let me in, but Watson was a brutal to use. It was really a professional services play. So we moved over in about 2017 to Google and Google Cloud and started looking for easier ways. We took on a number of projects, but we we're always looking for something that could break out. And IBM brought us two 911s. And I had the idea of what if we had the inverse of a chatbot and the AI pretended to be the caller, not the emergency dispatcher. So the opposite of a chatbot. And fortunately, my co-founder, Nathan Kroc, who's FSU grad, said, I think I can make that work. And we did. So we're really proud. We have over 500 911s that now use it. But we also always plan to go in the corporate space. So now we work with shipping logistics, airlines, insurance. I mean, you name it, it's all over the place. But the big thing that also happened, you mentioned conversational AI. So the one thing that Perplexity missed was we were very early into generative AI because we were ready for it. In fact, Nathan had actually brought me, I didn't know it at the time, kind of the idea for OpenAI, but it was just way too expensive for a startup to have done. And I made the right decision to say no, but I said, let's be ready. So we were in market 3 months after OpenAI came out with a product that generates the simulations. So that's Call Simulator. The other thing I'll say about Call Simulator for all you entrepreneurs that are here, all my original employees were actually students at FSU. FSU has a really good data science program and even a data science institute. So they were interns. I didn't pay for grad school, and a number of them are still part of the team. So, sometimes Tallahassee can feel like what it doesn't have, but it actually has quite a bit of talent in this area.
I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I share Call Simulator. It's over here.
It's just callsimulator.com.
Yeah, exactly. And so really cool. And then you've had, I mean, I don't think it's public yet, but whatever you are allowed to talk publicly about, you've had significant partners working with you, right? And looking
Well,
at,
yeah, for 911, that is a very unique space. So we actually worked with a partner called Priority Dispatch. They're all around the world. And then we are starting to work now with a huge call center company called Verint. They're
wow.
the people who do the call recording. And then we just launched with a company in Gainesville. It's called Gleim, Gleim, Digital Pilot Examiner. It's really a cool application where you practice your oral exam to become a private pilot.
Oh,
And
cool.
we actually have a patent underneath that for how we're doing some of the back and forth in there. So, yeah, that's exciting. And that's leading us into a lot of other ways our platform can be used. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun next couple of years.
Well, in terms of AI and opportunities there, because obviously I'm sure putting my business hat on, some people could be overwhelmed or intimidated. Like where do you start? I'm looking at all these accelerator programs recommending like almost 100 AI tools, and it's overwhelming. Like who do you go
Yeah.
to trust on what to
Well,
get started and use? So
I would say number one, you got to kind of get in the game, get comfortable, don't be afraid. There is a lot of just it's sort of, I call them parlor tricks. There's a lot. Watson was too hard to use. In some ways, generative's too easy to use. And what I mean by that is you can kind of get to a prototype of something fairly quick, fairly cheap, whatever. But really, when you dig into it, you're like, well, either everybody could do that, there's nothing novel in there, or it can't really scale what you've done. So, I think as an entrepreneur, we're just at the beginning. This is 1993, 4 with World Wide Web. This is early 2000s with the cloud. We are at the beginning. E-commerce in the 90s. We are at just the beginning. There's so many things ways this is going to be used. But the other thing I'll caution though is AI is at its heart a sociopath. And I mean that to sound as scary as it sounds, meaning it has no evil intent, but it also has no good intent. It is going to do what it's going to do. And it's going to do it based on the data you give it and kind of what you've built, whatever guardrails and purpose. It is going to hallucinate, right? There will be error. Like, if our, if you think about it like flying, if the bar for flying is no planes will ever crash or nobody will fly, then no one would ever fly, right? Well, the same's true with AI. Like, we're going to have to find that place where we're comfortable with the inaccuracy. We get, but in some of the deployments I've seen, it's like error rates can be, like 80%. In there. So be cautiously optimistic, I guess. But the biggest thing I'd say to entrepreneurs, so forget about making your own thing like I did. Use it in your business. Like, this is the calculator for the accountant, right? This is the computer for the company. Don't sit there and go, well, not for me, I do it the old way. You will be left behind by companies that use this tech to just do operational pieces, summarize things for you. I mean, there's a lot of ways to use this as a tool in your business. You don't have to create a tool.
yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. What do you think about AI agents? It's still like trying to
Well,
understand what that means.
yeah, right. And back to my, it's moving so quickly. So if you think about AI agents, and this is real, you can actually have that agent not only be given a task like you did Perplexity, you searched me and it did its thing, but you can actually say, I want you could have had that agent look in databases for me, right? So check this, check that, go check corporate records, whatever. You do all these different pieces, just like a human would. So you can give it not just like a search query, but it can be given a task. The other interesting thing about agents is you can have them interact with each other. So one agent maybe focused on my biography, another one focused on the company. And then they can meet, and then you create another one that summarizes it. And what I just described is real. Like, that is happening. But I'll tell you, all of that assumes that the core knowledge that it's using is accurate, is curated. I mean, some of the conversations I'm hearing today are funny with all these gray hairs. Is these are conversations we were having 40 years ago. You got to have data quality. You got to bring all your data together. You got to rationalize across the different data. I mean, these things are still true, but the agents are, I mean, I believe we will all have our own virtual assistant. It's not going to be Alexa or Siri. It's going to be literally, my agent that's doing my things for me and multiple. And in the morning, I'll be given a summary of what they found while I was sleeping. And it's, a huge productivity lift.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's one of the things that I've had some of my team members do is utilize AI, but it's still, they still need to double check everything, triple check accuracy. And
Human has to be in the loop. Well, the other thing is, I mean, there are now starting to be some that are trying to add some more creativity to it, right? I remember when it first came out and I was playing with it, one of the things you could do is you could say, write this story in the style of Hemingway, write this style in the style of Fitzgerald, right? So it's short and, punchy, flowery, right? Kind of thing. And it did a good, it did a good job of being different, but neither one of those were Hemingway or Fitzgerald, right? And so that's where I think it's a terrific first draft. It's a terrific kind of thing to have in front of you, but now you as a human need to get involved with that. It's
yeah,
not a short path to the end. It's a short path to the beginning.
love that. You still need experts, to be involved for sure.
Yeah, I mean, artificial general intelligence, which is where you're us. There are many different predictions. I was just listening the other day to a podcast where they're like, come on, give me a break. But there are a couple of other pieces that could fall into place during this. One of, not the least of which, is quantum computing. If they figure that out, then that's suddenly going to bring a scale that maybe you could do the processing power of the human brain, which is incredible. And so with that caveat, like I remember when the Pentium chip came out. Prior to the Pentium chip, graphics, computers, I mean, they were fine. I built my first one. But that Pentium chip came out and immediately everything improved. The complexity of the software, what it could do. So I watch for that. Like if suddenly quantum computing, not to mention, by the way, all your passwords will be toast. So get a quantum password maker day one when that happens.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. I mean, there's a lot of us, probably a good percentage our info's on the dark web already.
Well, the problem with all that is a lot of what's been stolen is encrypted, but the minute that quantum computing exists, all those encryptions will be broken. So what a lot of people don't realize is they have these big breaches and everything, and they're like, well, why am I not as hurt? And not that people aren't, but why is it not bigger? And part of that is because of the encryption. But the problem is they're keeping that data, and the minute they can crack the code, then I mean, I'm fully prepared. Certainly in my kids' lifetime, they're going to have to reissue like a whole different kind of ID system, because your social security number will be useless.
Toast.
Yeah.
Really neat. That's so neat. We had really good conversation and prep before this, and I want to make sure we covered those things too, because I remember you mentioned about, because you've successfully grown a couple tech companies here in Tallahassee, and now with everything being remote, hybrid, you don't have to stay at a certain location anymore to grow a business. But you've had a nationwide, I would say, exposure too and growth. Your market is just not limited to just Tallahassee, North Florida.
Our clients are all over the country, and in fact, we've had them around the world. So
yeah. So how have you managed to do that? Like what has
well,
worked for
I mean,
you?
these days location is irrelevant. Especially for a tech company, because at the end of the day, we're in the cloud, and so we can be wherever it needs to be. So I think physical location just doesn't mean a lot in a tech company. It does, obviously bricks and mortar, that sort of thing. Here locally, like if you need to take advantage of the Mag Lab, that kind of thing, you need to be here, right? You can't do that. I mean, well, I guess maybe there are things you can do virtually, but for the most part, you need to be here. The other thing is the tools for virtual teams are really amazing. I mean, I don't feel disconnected, even though my people are mostly now in other places. There are a few of us still here, but a lot of them are around the country. But, thanks to things like Slack and, all this kind of technology. And then the other interesting thing is that clients more and more don't expect you to be on site. We actually try to get on site. We were just on site with a major airline, and it's great because when you can get that, you get something you just can't get with this. But more and more people don't even want that because their team is dispersed. So like to physically get together, it's not about me coming to you. It's like your people coming to you and me coming to you. But that's a huge boon for entrepreneurs because that was a huge, I have 2.2 million Delta miles. Because back in the day, they wanted to see the whites of your eyes, face to face, not this.
So then you've managed to, in your network, have a great client base that is happy to do everything remotely, and that's the thing too. I think people have concepts. Maybe it's you're like, oh, you can't grow a tech company in Tallahassee, or those kinds of concepts. Just, oh, you're limited here. But really, no, that's not true.
In the end, what again, depending on the tech and who you're going to have, I think there's a lot of homegrown talent, or home in the sense that home educated, let's call it that, talent. So I think that's sitting there for you, and then it's still our biggest weakness is we don't have a lot of ability to raise capital here. There are some really good investors here, angel, and some good people, but we don't have like a major VC infrastructure, even the angel network kind of, and that's a problem. So, but here's what I did. Think of yourself regionally, because the Southeast has become a pretty big deal. From Miami, up into Atlanta and up into the Carolinas, there's a lot of first-class investment money. And then look, if you've got something great, go up to the Northeast, go out west. You can, but in the last thing I'll mention about this, you don't need the kind of money you used to. My first computer for my first company cost me $10,000 with the tractor form printer, right? And of course that thing would be a joke, right? You couldn't run anything today. And I'm always grateful because I built a business out of it. Today, that $10,000, I could over a year rent Google Cloud, a heck of a lot of infrastructure that would blow all that away. So I think that the lack of funding is becoming less relevant. And in fact, more and more entrepreneurs, and remember, most entrepreneurs never raise a nickel. It is, we all hear the stories, Zuckerbergs and all this kind of stuff. That is the exception. I've done multiple companies. Half of my companies, I never raised a nickel. What I did, I used my own money, and then I sold. So I really used early adopter cash as revenue. And so that's something else I'll throw out there for people. I would be much more focused on your product market fit, your ideal customer profile. That's what's going to make you successful, not the VC money. And if you play it right, you'll never need them. And if you do need them, then you'll be prepared.
I'm glad you said all that, because some people have a misconception about, oh, you need VC funding to get started.
No, they love you to think
scale
that.
A business. Yeah.
Well, if that's true, then 99% of businesses would never begin.
Right.
Because they only take 1%. So it's a lovely game for the VCs to have entrepreneurs. Oh my God, I got to be there, and they're kind of freaking out about the fact that us entrepreneurs are going, well, we're not sure we need you.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in fact, a lot of companies now, their venture arms are investing in the applications they need because they're like, look, you just need $1 million. Fine, I don't need $100 million. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not if your idea is open AI, right? And you need billions. I mean, it's not that. But if you're trying to build a more reasonable, you know, kind of business, you may need it, but odds are you don't.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see there's so much value in growing an actual business and making money first, learning how to be profitable and then selling versus like, okay, let's raise funds and then not be profitable and then failing. And you've,
Well, the
wasted millions of
failed,
dollars.
yeah, there was, look, here's the where all that fail fast and all that came from. When you're early in a market, you kind of have to have that feeling, right? But if you're coming into a market that's a little more mature, you can build a business around that quicker, right? So you're not the first guy, but you're the third guy or the fourth guy into the space. Um, but yeah, I've never liked failed fast and all that. And the other thing, I always am very suspicious of any entrepreneur that brags about the amount of money they've raised. I want you to brag about the amount of money you've brought on with revenue. I want you to brag about the quality of your product, right? Um, and hopefully brag about your profitability.
Absolutely. And I know I said that we can, see how the conversation flows. I want to make sure we include, for those of you who don't know about Domi Awards, I wanted to mention Domi Awards and then talk a little bit about, just where you see where things can be going for Domi as a whole. Domi Awards is April 10th for any of you who aren't
Yeah,
familiar with
hope to
it.
see you all there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Domi has evolved with the community. When we started it, there was no entrepreneurship school here. There was no real incubator. The business school had like an office kind of thing. And so we were a real meeting place for everybody. And FSU students to actually one of our first successful entrepreneurs, he was in his 60s, and he came in. So as we see things evolving and there is the School of Entrepreneurship and there is more and more programs, I think we're starting to more and more focus on the community entrepreneur. We'll still be there for the students and those kind of folks, but they've got resources. So I like where we're moving because the community, a lot of entrepreneurs are solo entrepreneurs, right? They're a couple of people, 2, 3 people, but those are critical people in Tallahassee. I mean, tip of the cap to Proof, right? And even Grasslands, which didn't work, but Gabe was one of the first. I think he was maybe the second into that space. So we need to support those local entrepreneurs because sometimes they'll go regional, sometimes national. Ology here in town is selling. Ran into their booze in Chicago. But again, I think Domi is evolving. It's where the community needs it to be. And
Yeah.
right now, I think it's more what I call the community entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I really think it still serves a purpose in kind of getting the business owner ready for the future.
Yeah.
There's multiple efforts locally that's happening, workforce ready, workforce training, all of that. But there's something to it where the focus is on the founder. Domi really focuses on the founder and solopreneurs and early stage entrepreneurs. And then when you get more mature, if you feel like you need to move on in other areas of the ecosystem, then of course there's local businesses that can serve that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and I would invite people who are maybe considering their business, to just even a simple membership with Domi, just to start to have those conversations, go through some of the programs we have. It's good to just know, one, you're not alone. but two, there is some basic blocking and tackling that we all can learn. I mean, a lot of it is just going to be unique to your journey, but there are some, you shouldn't fall in the same hole that people like I fell in, right? Which is the only reason you ever hang out with people like me, is my job is to say, you might want to think about that because I tried that. And, um, and that's worth listening to, even though I will say, what I say to my mentees is be persistent, don't be stubborn. And I think a lot of first time entrepreneurs, because they're so used to, well, I don't care what you think, I'm going to make it. Well, okay, that's great. But sometimes, listen, because some of those people might be telling you, like, maybe you ought to pivot, make a change, like I did. Like, hey, it was hard to give up. I had this Watson, I had all this great stuff, but I knew it wasn't the right way. And some of my mentors kind of told me, I think you need to find a different path. And I listened to them, and I'm really glad I did.
I'm so glad you brought up mentors too, because I really found a lot of great relationships through Domi. That's how I heard about some of the other local resource partners that Domi's partnered with. And I would have never heard of BNI, never would have heard of the chambers in town if it weren't for Domi. And also to meet founders like yourself and other CEOs in town, that my network really started from Domi. So really, I just want to say thank you as being one of the co-founders, original co-founders, and still sticking with it. Just you're still around.
Hey, I live here. I, just enjoyed the Monroe the other day. So it's just, it's so nice to have more than one or two restaurants. And one or two microbrews and coffee shops, and think about Lucky Goat and all of it. So it's been, that's really, I think, for all of us who live here, don't be in the peanut gallery complaining. How can you get down on the field and be part of the change that you want, right? And that might be helping, supporting businesses, or maybe doing your own like I did, because it's here. It's not as easy and apparent as it is in some other places, but 2025 Tallahassee is a very different place than 2013 Tallahassee.
Yeah, I know. We were just talking about how the appeal is definitely better now. Like there's more to do. It's really true. Tallahassee grows on you, but now there's just more. College Town, Jane Street was dirt.
Yeah,
pretty much dirt when I moved here.
I know. Most of my memory was either it was dirt, or it was a construction site.
Yeah.
When you look at I mean, there are just so many things that are really nice. Plus, we have all the things we've always had. It's beautiful. Just all the other things. You're not that far from the Gulf and all that. So you take that plus now that energy. And it's great, but appreciate all the people who've supported Domi over the years, and hope to see you at the awards. And thank you for everything you've done. I mean, in the early days, the people who were there early on, it would have been very easy again to be in the peanut gallery to kind of say, no way, when it was just 4 walls. But that's what it takes. It takes a community believing, working together, and then amazing things can happen.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to celebrate with y'all at Domi Awards and all the new things that are about to take place in the next few years. So thank you, David, and I wish you all the luck that you need. You probably don't even need luck. Seems like you're doing well.
Oh no,
with Comp Simulator.
I was always welcome luck. Yes. So if not at the awards, I'll see you at a local brewery or coffee shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll see you guys on the next episode. David, I'll see you on the other side. Hang on for a few seconds. All right. Bye, guys.